as we were talking about earlier, is taking the kratos away from the demos. Once the kratos is away from the demos, all you're left is kratos, is pure power. And it's a great relief to see in the emergence of these bilateral relationships, more formalized between Hungary and America, that at last there is an antidote on the geopolitical landscape of the West to this homogenizing phenomenon.
Marty, what do you think this support means for us Hungarians?
First of all, if you look at the official motto of the European Union, it says united in diversity. And we often forget that we're diverse as nations who constitute the European Union in favor of the talking points of Brussels, which always talk about unanimity, breaking away the veto powers, and trampling upon nations. So the ever closer union will be finalized sooner rather than later. And this is a political fight for the political future of Europe. And I'm honestly surprised that why everybody's surprised that we're having political discussions on political questions. Because if we are to set the future for our communities, including our nations, including our local communities and families, we have to agree, or at least we have to debate at what kind of future we envision for all these communities. And this is what we're having right now. You have the Hungarian and the Slovakian and the Czech and a bunch of other positions on the one side, which are calling for maintaining the diversity part of the EU's ethos. And you have a bunch of unelected bureaucrats on the other side who say that everybody should be similar and all the differences should be taken care of and just go extinct sooner rather than later. So on that account, having a very powerful voice joining our side is good news, despite the fact that obviously the United States is not a member of the European Union, so they cannot really help us with the voting things in the Council and elsewhere. So on that account, just to have this political debate out in the open, have the lines drawn up, and also to engage in a civilized discussion on where Western society is headed, and Gladden has been talking about this at length earlier, I think is crucial, because if we pretend that politics is not conflictual, then we're going to deceive ourselves, and we're going to go down in a direction when everything and everybody will be labeled as human rights and values, and then all of a sudden this will be outside of political debate, despite the fact that we do not have consensus on either of these issues. What is happening right now is that we're bringing these contested ideas back to the political podium, and finally we're having a political discussion on, for example, how families should look like. What about gay marriage? What about the future of our nations? What about the interpretations of history, and so on and so forth? And these are not settled yet. And the debate on how we're using this, how we're interpreting this is long overdue. So if you will, the Trump administration coming back to the White House just, released this enormous power of free speech at the end, which enables us to discuss all these very delicate and very deep questions for the future.
Gladden, why are we experiencing this strong American support here in Hungary?
Well, I think that's very clear that the Vice President recognizes that Hungary has become a kind of exception within Europe, not by being anti-European, contrary to what the international media say, and contrary to, this has become a kind of pressure that is put on Hungarian people constantly by the international globalist liberals in the European Union. They're trying to create this pressure, and they want to cause distress in ordinary people in Hungary and make them think that they are not good Europeans. And this has been their playbook for a long time. So they are trying to define what European means. And for them, European means dissolving what you are. Only by dissolving our national heritage and ultimately our nations, only by doing that can we build a stronger European Union. That's their model. And what we've shown now through the Patriots for Europe platform and this set of new patriotic European ideas is, well, that's clearly not working. Does the European Union become stronger when countries cannot defend themselves, when they cannot make decisions about their own energy sources, when they cannot provide what their citizenry needs, when they're becoming more and more industrially decrepit? Well, that's not something that's happening here. Yes, there are big economic challenges in Europe, but more and more companies are choosing to move to this country. They're choosing to build manufacturing here, and that's something that is not happening elsewhere, or it's actually declining elsewhere. So that's something that's being recognized now. People started talking in the international media yesterday, well, this constitutes foreign interference by the United States. Come on. Foreign interference means hey, I have 15 billion euros of your money, and I'll give it back to you as long as you change your government. And by the way, your last 4 elections were not democratic, but this election could be democratic if you make the right choice. That is what we mean by foreign interference, or there's a simpler word for it, blackmail. So that's what blackmail is. And we already saw the playbook happen in Poland a couple of years ago. Poland was identified under its law and justice government as being opposed to the European definition of rule of law. Well, magically, they changed their government, and a few months later, the European Union commissars looked gently upon the country and concluded, rule of law now prevails, now that they've sent the jackbooted police thugs into the media that the law and justice government had sponsored previously, whatever. So that's a clenched fist or a closed fist. And I think all the vice president yesterday has said, everyone else is coming at you with closed fists. Actually, closed fists full of your money. But here, my hands are open. We're recognizing, as the official documents of the US say, that there are healthy countries in Central, Southern, and Eastern Europe. They're not bad. Everyone has said they are. They're doing something different. Life's kind of normal in a lot of ways, but you're not allowed to see that if you want to participate in the halls of European power. And he recognized a different reality. And if recognition of that reality constitutes foreign interference, then words are meaningless. So I think we can be grateful for that.
As we are rapidly running out of time, I have just one last question on a very important topic on the war in Ukraine. So at yesterday's press conference, Prime Minister Orbán has offered once again to host the US-Russia peace talks here in Budapest, which had a very warm reception from the Vice President. And I think it really highlights, how Hungary is becoming one of the most reliable partners of the US here in Central Europe, or Europe altogether. What do you think this alliance, this US-Hungarian alliance, can do to try to further these peace talks and to finally put an end to a war? We have a minute and a half for everyone. We can start with Gladden in reverse order.
Well, this came about first, it was mentioned by President Trump in mid-October of last year, and he said after a phone call with the Russian president that Budapest could be the site of a summit eventually between the US and Russian presidents. Obviously, some months have gone by, a few other things have been happening in international affairs, but this is a recognition of what? Well, in this region in general, and I think in Hungary in particular, there's a very realistic and pragmatic calculus about the state of world affairs. This is not a region where you can afford to have illusions of your own grandeur. It is a region where the reality is made very clear every day. And the Hungarian Prime Minister, above all, I think in Europe, is someone who's known, even by his enemies, as recognizing reality. And that's a unique offer nowadays. It's not easy to recognize reality, but there's now a premium on that in statesmanship. And so I think, after years in which it was said, well, Budapest is isolating itself so much. It's so sad what's happened in Hungarian foreign policy. Hungary just keeps isolating itself. Well, actually, it could look like that from the standpoint of the blackmailers in chief over in Brussels, but the reality is that if you want to have an honest conversation about difficult subjects in international relations, this is a place to do it. Even from 2-3 years ago, the Prime Minister was talking with each of the major parties that were involved in settling, continuing and then settling the Russia-Ukraine conflict. So clearly we're entering into an era internationally where we need that kind of practical diplomacy. We need a place within Europe where we can build those institutions and exchanges. and this is becoming that place.
Just real quick, I don't know if you've noticed that our Prime Minister is getting into heated Twitter exchanges with the Prime Minister of Poland, speaking of foreign election interference. And he put a very nice tweet out there last night when he asked Donatus that, what have you done for peace? And I think this is the most crucial thing when it comes to ending the war in Ukraine, that at least we have two governments in the West, the Hungarian and the American. And I would also count the Vatican, which is not a government per se, who wants to end this war as soon as possible. Because wars are bad, because people are getting killed, and because that's a Christian thing to do. And I think this is the fundamental basis why we can become a center for talks and discussion and peace negotiations, because we're not coming to these talks with any predetermined agenda. We want to end the conflict because it's destroying lives, simple as that. And I haven't seen any other European country who's interested in that. I'm rather seeing them interested in prolonging the conflict for as long as they can in order to serve their domestic political goals. And the most brutal thing there is that they're paying for their own political goals with the lives of innocent Ukrainians, and nobody's talking about that.
Winston Churchill used to say, it is always better to jaw than war. And I think generally that's correct. Whatever side of the Ukraine debate you may be, and in my own country, in Britain, there's overwhelmingly a horror at Russian aggression and the illegal war that Putin unleashed in February 2022. But there is an agreement across all sides that Ukraine needs, as soon as possible, to find its way back to peace and prosperity. I think there's agreement all across the board in Britain on that. It's a very, very rare moment of consensus. It sometimes seems as if Ukrainian nationalism in Britain is the only nationalism you are allowed to entertain. And so I hope that the efforts of Prime Minister Orban and President Trump and, of course, Vice President Vance bear fruit. I'm growing a little bit more skeptical as the clock keeps ticking, but I'm much, much happier to see jaw than war.
James, Marcy, Gladden, thank you very much for joining us. Please join me in thanking our wonderful panelists for the insightful discussion. Just to give you a little heads up on what's next, we'll have a short intermission to get the stage ready for the Vice President. We'll have a welcome address for our Chairman, Dr. Balázs Orbán, and then the discussion with the Vice President and our Director General, Zoltán Szalai. So please stay seated while we get the stage ready, and thank you so much for your patience.
Mr. Vice President, ladies and gentlemen, dear friends of MCC, a warm welcome to all of you on this special occasion. It's an honor to welcome Vice President of the United States, JD Vance, to the Mathias Corvinus Collegium. My name is Balázs Orbán. I'm the chairman of the board of MCC. I remember that almost exactly 3 years ago, in the summer of 2023, we began discussions with then Senator Vance team about how great it would be to host him at MCC. At that time, we hoped he could join us, talk about his book, Hillbilly Elegy, and discuss his role in shaping modern conservative ideas in the United States. Since then, much has changed. First of all, his second book is on the horizon to be published in a few months. And since then, he has become Vice President of the United States. His visit to Budapest is especially meaningful to us. I can confidently say that the friendship between Hungary and the United States, the strong bond between our two sovereign nations, has never been better. We are very grateful that you, Mr. Vice President, came to Budapest and for the inspiring speech you gave yesterday. And we are particularly grateful to you that you found time to visit MCC. Because MCC is not just an institution, it's a mission. It is a mission to lay the foundation of Hungary's future success by educating the next generation of patriotic Hungarians, young men and women who are committed to their country and at the same time fully capable of competing on an international stage. MCC also stands as a cornerstone in the renewal of Hungary's university model. As a foundation-based institution, it is built on the belief that true talent development requires more than knowledge alone. It requires values, and it requires a clear worldview. We openly affirm that the values we represent are rooted in the commitment to our nation. We would like to teach our students that their talent matters most when it is placed in the service of their community and their country. As you can imagine, this approach has not been without its critics. Liberal voices around the world continue to challenge us, and the reform of Hungary's university model has become a subject of political debate. In fact, progressive forces in Brussels have taken steps that have sanctioned Hungarian students simply because Hungary chose to reshape its higher education system to better meet the challenges of our time. In 2024, they even tried to silence conservative voices by trying to shut down the NatCon conference in Brussels that we organized together with Edmund Foundation. Quite a hostile environment. But in those moments, there were voices of support. One of the most notable among them was and is Vice President Vance. He has often spoken critically about the direction many modern universities are taking. The concerns he raises are very similar to ours. In many parts of the Western world, universities are increasingly shaped by strong progressive ideology, one that can limit freedom of thought, restrict open debate, and weaken both scientific research and true talent development. So, Mr. Vice President, allow me to thank you not only for being with us today, but for standing with us when it truly matters. Your support helps us defend our position with credibility and conviction. To us, this is more than a gesture, it's a clear sign of the enduring strength of American-Hungarian relations. The Mathias Corvinus Collegium offers programs, courses, opportunities to more than 8,000 students in over 30 locations across Europe. What began as a mainly Hungarian initiative has grown far beyond that. We are expanding across the region and internationally, with presence in cities like Brussels, Berlin, Vienna. MCC stands out because it combines education, research, and public debate. We are both an educational institution and a think tank. We publish books, host conferences, and bring together students, scholars, international experts, exchanging ideas. MCC's success has definitely not gone unnoticed. And the best proof of our work is here today. The many talented, thoughtful, and inspiring students who are part of this wonderful community. Mr. Vice President, thank you very much once again for honoring us with your presence today. We are truly delighted to welcome you at MCC. And now we will have a moderated discussion hosted by Zoltán Szalai, Director General, MCC. With that, I invite to the floor the Vice President of the United States, JD Vance.
Please. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning, thank you. It's good to be with you. Good morning, Mr. Vice President. Thank you very much for coming to MCC. We have a big audience today, and we would like to have more time, but we have only 30 minutes, so I start immediately.
Sure.
Why did you accept our invitation to MCC? It's the first time that the US Vice President is coming to Hungary, that you are here, and you are immediately at MCC on stage with a conversation with us. Of course, as you know, MCC is an institution where we have more than 8,000 students in 30 centers all across the countries and in the neighboring countries. We also do a lot of research, a lot of events, and from the age of 10, basically till the PhD, till the end of the PhD studies, we have a lot of students. Why was it for you important to come to us?
Well, I'll give you two answers. So the first is that I was having lunch with Viktor Orban yesterday, and I said, what can I do to help? And he said, go and speak at MCC. And I said, okay. Teach me ever to ask that question again. But no, we're very excited to be here because it is such an important institution. And what I like about MCC is that it shows, I believe this was started in 1996, correct? And what I like is that educational institutions, there's this attitude that certain people have that they should be completely distinct from all democratic influence, from the sovereign will of the people. The idea that the university or the educational institutions stand completely apart and should just basically be able to receive unlimited funding from the taxpayer, even though they don't support the civilization that they were founded on, should receive unlimited resources and unlimited public support, even when they go at the very people that they ask that support from. And I think that what you guys are showing is that academic institutions are part of the civilization that gives birth to them. They're part of the people who actually fund and resource these places. And so what you guys have shown is that you can actually have a university that's committed to excellence, an academic institution, I should say, that's committed to excellence, where students from all walks of life, as you told me backstage, from very young students all the way up to PhD students, can come together, discuss ideas, debate ideas, have a free exchange and open debate amongst yourselves, but also be fundamentally committed to the values that actually make it possible for all of us to live in these great societies together. So much of the academy has tried to destroy the foundations of Western civilization. You can actually have an institution that tries to build up the foundations of Western civilization, that corrects what needs to be corrected, that changes what needs to be changed, but is fundamentally committed to the project that we want to have open debate. We want to have freedom of religion. We want people to walk down the street in public safety. We want borders. We want the type of economies that provide good lives and good wages to our people. Foundationally, it's kind of crazy that so many Western academic institutions are not committed to any of these values and yet expect public support. You guys stand in defiance of that, so I thought it'd be fun to come and spend a morning with you.
Thank you. I could talk for hours about MCC, but let's jump into political topics. You have now an issue in the United States that the Ukrainian intelligence services attempted an influence on the American elections.
Sure.
Can you a bit describe to the Hungarian audience what is this about? And why I ask it's because it's a topic as well in Hungary.
Yes.
We have this issue with the Druzhba pipeline, which is delivering oil through Ukraine to Hungary. Also, President Zelensky said that if Viktor Orban doesn't change his behavior, he will send his soldiers to his private address. So also we have an issue with this question of Ukrainian influence. What is the situation in your country, and how do you see this in Hungary?
So first of all, I wasn't even aware that Zelensky had said that he was going to send private soldiers to the Prime Minister's residence until yesterday. Viktor actually told me that, and then I went and looked it up. Almost couldn't believe it's true, but it's true. It's completely scandalous. You should never have a foreign head of government or a foreign head of state threatening the head of government of an allied nation. It's preposterous. It's unacceptable. And what I find so interesting about, there's a lot of conversation about foreign influence in our elections. So you saw this back in 2016, where a lot of the American media said that it was a true scandal that the Russian government bought like $500,000 of Facebook advertisements during the 2016 campaign. And for what it's worth, I don't want Russia involved in our elections in the same way that I'm sure you don't want any other country involved in your elections. I've also been told that the Vice President of the United States coming and saying that Viktor Orban is doing a good job and is a helpful statesman to the cause of peace, that's foreign influence. But what's not foreign influence is when the European Union threatens billions of dollars withheld from Hungary because you guys protect your borders. That's apparently not foreign influence. What's not foreign influence is when the Ukrainians shut down pipelines, causing suffering among the Hungarian people in an effort to influence an election. That's allegedly not foreign influence. It doesn't pass the smell test. Foreign influence is when other governments threaten, cajole, and try to use economic influence to tell you how to vote. And that, to the Hungarian people, whether you like Viktor Orban or not, whether you agree with this or that policy, that is fundamentally an assault on your sovereignty. You know what I have never done, even though we have, of course, a lot of economic power in the United States of America. We are the economic and military superpower of the world. We have never threatened Hungary, saying, if you don't vote for Viktor Orban, you're not going to get this and this. We would never do that because we respect the Hungarian people enough to respect their sovereignty. The fact that so many foreign actors, whether they're transnational organizations like the bureaucrats in Brussels, or whether it's foreign governments, are literally threatening the Hungarian people, vote this way or we're going to exact our revenge on you, that should make you very angry. You should vote against that for the simple reason that you are sovereign in this country. One of the coolest things about my visit is, late yesterday, when it was closed down, we went and saw the crown of St. Stephen in the Parliament. And I love the symbolism of this, of course, because it's one of the oldest, maybe the oldest surviving crown that exists in Western civilization, but it's there at the center of the parliamentary building. What does that mean? That means that sovereignty rests with the Hungarian people. The people are sovereign in Hungary. But for that to be true, the Hungarian people have to reject these foreign influence operations, vote for who they want to be their leader, reject the Brussels bureaucrats.
You were talking about the influence from Brussels. It's also interesting how, for example, free speech is in danger. If you look on the tech companies
Sure.
and the influence on them from the Brussels bureaucrats, it's an important topic, it's an important question. But in connection to you, one of the largest Hungarian oppositional leftist mainstream press wrote that there is no Ukrainian or Brussels influence in Hungary, only Russian influence. Do you know this from somehow?
I had not seen that observation, but again, I find it darkly ironic that people are accusing me of engaging in some kind of foreign influence. All that we're saying is that Viktor Orban, he does a good job, because he does. He's a very, very important partner for peace with the American government, because he is. I hate to say this, because they're obviously much bigger economies, much more populous countries in Europe, but most of the European political capitals have not been nearly as helpful to the cause of peace between Russia and Ukraine as Viktor Orban has. And it's not because, by the way, I've sat in private meetings with Viktor where he has very, very capably summed up the Ukrainian position, where he said, this is what the Ukrainians care about, this is what the Russians care about, because if you want to make peace, you have to understand what the two parties to the conflict actually think. It's not a betrayal to try to understand where both the Russians and the Ukrainians are coming from. It's a necessary component to achieving a peaceful settlement. That's not Russian influence, that's a desire for peace. This is not American influence. Do you know how much, again, I would never do this, but you know how easy it would be for the United States to threaten Hungary economically in the same way the EU has? We would never do that because we respect our friends enough to respect their democratic will. What's going on in the EU, what's going on in Brussels, what's going on with some of these foreign influence operations, I'm telling you, it is a scandal. It's the reason why I'm here. This is unprecedented. It's unprecedented for an American vice president to come the week before an election. The reason why we're doing it is because we thought there was so much garbage happening against Victor in this election that we had to show that there are actually a lot of people and a lot of friends across the world who recognize that Victor and his government are doing a good job and they're important partners for peace. That's why we're here, but ultimately the Hungarian people are going to be sovereigns because that's how it should be.
We often hear that we are living in dangerous times. There is an ongoing situation in Iran now, but of course, which is next to our border is the Russian-Ukrainian conflict. I think when you and President Trump won the elections, there was a window of opportunity to stop this. You tried to stop this, then it didn't happen. I think, and the Brusselian bureaucrats and the European elite said that, and somehow made the pressure that not to stop and not to make peace as soon as possible. What do you think? What was the motivations of the Brusselian elite not to make this peace, and how long can it take to make it?
Well, first of all, yeah, the president has said this in the context of the Iran conflict. He said this in the context of some of the negotiations between Russia and Ukraine. As much as we love Europe, and as much as we love European peoples and cultures, I mean, the United States, as you know, is very much a daughter nation of the European continent. We've been disappointed by a lot of the political leadership in Europe because they don't seem particularly interested in solving this particular conflict. And what the president has said is it's the hardest war to solve. In some ways, we thought it would be the easiest, but it has been the hardest. We've been at it for now 14 months, and we're just going to keep on working at it. We have made significant progress. I mean, if you go back to where we were in the beginning, where we couldn't even get the Russians or the Ukrainians to put on paper what is it that you want in order to settle the conflict, we've now gotten that. And we've got pieces of paper from the Ukrainians and pieces of paper from the Russians. We've actually got them to state their positions, and over time, their positions have gotten closer and closer together. Now, obviously, they're not perfectly aligned, because if they were, the conflict would be over. But, we've had a lot of help from some of our friends. I think Giorgia Meloni in Italy has been very helpful. Even some of the Western European capitals have been helpful, at least behind the scenes. But the most helpful has been Victor, because Victor is the one who's encouraged us to truly understand this, to understand from the perspective of both the Ukrainians and the Russians what is necessary for them to end the conflict. And that's why we've made some progress. We haven't obviously made the final amount of progress, but I'm pretty optimistic about this, because fundamentally the war has stopped making sense. What I would say to both the Russians and the Ukrainians is that, we're talking about haggling at this point over a few square kilometers of territory in one direction or another. Is that worth losing hundreds of thousands of additional Russian and Ukrainian young men? Is that worth an additional months or even years of higher energy prices and economic devastation? We think the answer is clearly no, but it takes, two to tango. So while Victor and President Trump are going to continue to work towards a peaceful settlement, fundamentally we can only open the door. The Russians and the Ukrainians have to walk through it.
And what do you think about Europe? Europe has several problems if we look on the growth numbers of the European Union, on the competitiveness, on the energy prices. How do you see Europe, and what could be the future for Europe under these circumstances?
Yes, it's very sad, because there's so much. I talked about this in my speech last night a little bit. There's so much discussion in the European press. Do Vance and Trump and Rubio, do they hate Europe? Do they love Europe? The answer is we absolutely love Europe. It's an important trading partner, but most importantly, again, like I said, it's an important cultural cousin of the United States of America. The ideas that founded the United States of America were first birthed on the European continent. We're very mindful of that fact. And of course, we love the people, the culture, the everything about this place. But we do have some disagreements with the political leadership. In particular, why have the Europeans, while saying, by the way, that Russia is the biggest national security threat, why have the Europeans made themselves completely dependent on unreliable sources of energy? Like, if you think that Russia, an energy superpower, is the biggest threat, you should do everything in your power to make yourselves economically and energy dominant, like President Trump has done in the United States. Our European friends have done the exact opposite. If you look at the cost of electricity in the United Kingdom, which is way underinvested in their energy resources, you know, UK families are paying 4 times, 5 times, 6 times what United States citizens are paying for electricity. Now, obviously, I care most about America's citizens. That's who I'm elected to represent. But isn't it a scandal that middle-class Brits, that people who are working hard and playing by the rules can't afford to heat their home, can't afford to transport themselves to work because their leadership has made energy so expensive? Isn't it a scandal that when normal people on the European continent try to talk about what's going on in their governments, they try to criticize their governments, they try to exercise their rights of free speech, those governments then go to American social media companies and say, you must censor the citizens of your own country because we don't want to hear them. We don't want to hear their free expression. We don't want to hear their free speech. There's just so much wrong with the political leadership. And I would particularly say the bureaucratic leadership in Brussels, right? People who aren't elected, who are not responsive to the democratic will, and I think have made the European continent less secure, less free, and less prosperous. The reason why we make criticism of European political capitals is because we want Europe to thrive, and we think they're making a lot of mistakes. You know, I've had a lot of conversations with European friends, with European heads of state and government, and it's always funny. They always say, well, you know, the United States it defies economic logic. You guys just have way higher economic growth. You have way lower energy costs. They say this as if it was something that happened through accident, rather than through the policy choices of the President of the United States. It is not magical that the United States has lower energy costs than the United Kingdom. It's because we've made smart decisions and their leadership has not. They could change course, and we hope that they will.
I have the opportunity now to ask you about Iran. There are latest developments, I think very positive developments during the night that we received, that there is a ceasefire. What can we know more about the latest developments in the Middle East?
Yes, that's why I was a little late this morning. I was up very late last night and talking about that. Look, I do think there are good developments here. And let me just say a few things. First of all, what the president set out to do was decimate the Iranian military, decimate their ability to wage conventional war. And that military objective, as the president said yesterday, as I said yesterday, has been achieved. And because of that, what the president did is he basically issued an ultimatum to the Iranians. He said, open up the straits, stop trying to hold the world's economy hostage, and we'll engage in a ceasefire. And that's exactly the agreement that we came to last night. The Iranians have agreed to open up the straits. The United States has agreed to stop attacking. And that, not just the United States, but also our allies, have agreed to stop attacking. And that is the basis of this fragile truce that we have, which is now, 8 to 12 hours old. Now, here's what I'll say about this. I've learned a lot about the Iranian system and a lot about the way the Iranians negotiate. As the president told me last night, the Iranians are better negotiators than they are fighters. I'm sure they don't like to hear that, but it's true. But here's a couple things. So, one, just in the response that we've seen from various segments of Iran, you have on the one hand people within Iran who have responded very favorably. The foreign minister who said, look, we agreed to the United States' terms. We'll do a ceasefire, we'll do a negotiation, we'll open the Straits of Hormuz, and then we'll see if we can come to more agreement down the road. So some of the people have responded favorably and have said the right things. And then you have some people on social media within their system who are basically lying about what we've accomplished militarily. They're lying about the nature of the agreement. They're lying about the nature of the ceasefire. And so you have just, even within their system, and this is why I say this is a fragile truce, you have people who clearly want to come to the negotiating table and work with us to find a good deal. And then you have people who are lying about even the fragile truce that we've already struck. And that's just an interesting thing about their system. And the final point that I'll say about this is the President of the United States has told me, and he's told the entire negotiating team, the Secretary of State, the Special Envoy, Steve Witkoff, he said, go and work in good faith to come to an agreement. That is what he has told us to do. If the Iranians are willing, in good faith, to work with us, I think we can make an agreement. If they're going to lie, if they're going to cheat, if they're going to try to prevent even the fragile truce that we've set up from taking place, then they're not going to be happy. Because what the president has also shown is that we still have clear military, diplomatic, and maybe most importantly, we have extraordinary economic leverage. So the president has told us not to use those tools. He's told us to come to the negotiating table. But if the Iranians don't do the exact same thing, they're going to find out that the president of the United States is not one to mess around. He's impatient. He's impatient to make progress. He has told us to negotiate in good faith. And I think if they negotiate in good faith, we will be able to find a deal. But that's a big if. And ultimately, it's up to the Iranians how they negotiate. I hope they make the right decision.
We are here with a lot of talented Hungarian students. You talk a lot about education.
Yes.
How do you see the future of education? In which direction should it be developed? And do you know a bit the Hungarian education system, especially the tertiary education system, our university system? What is your opinion about this, and how will you develop your education system?
Well, I like that the Hungarian university system has imposed what I would call some democratic constraints here. The taxpayer should not be expected to fund radical gender ideology. The taxpayer should not be expected to fund sets of ideas. Now, people have free speech, of course. They can say whatever they want to, but you're not entitled to taxpayer funding if you're advocating civil unrest and violence in the streets and gender ideology. Ultimately, the taxpayers, they're the ones who decide what they're willing to fund, and they should be the ones making that decision. So I really admire that Hungary has actually brought some common sense back to the connection between funding and the university system. You can say whatever you want, but in Hungary, you don't get unlimited subsidy if you want to say something that's really crazy or that promotes violence, et cetera. I think that's a very important thing. I think in the American system, we're making progress in that direction. We've said to the university system in the United States that you're no longer allowed to discriminate based on race. This sounds crazy, but 3 years ago, not only were they allowed to, but they were actively encouraged to discriminate against white students, against students of certain faiths. They were told, against Asian students, they were actually told that you had to have a higher score if your skin color was a certain tone, and a lower score if your skin color was a different tone. That's a violation of the American law. That's a violation of the American Constitution. That's a violation of basic morality. And the United States has now stopped that practice thanks to the leadership of the President and our Secretary of Education. So we're making progress, I think, in frankly reining the university system in. Less discrimination, more promotion of free speech, more recognition that taxpayer funding is not unlimited, and that's a very good thing. And I think, you know, fundamentally, the education system has two roles. It has to prepare people to become effective and capable workers. They have to have the skills necessary to contribute to the modern economy, and they have to have the thought processes. They have to have the ability to think critically so that they can participate in a modern democracy. And I think that's what the education system has to do. For too long in the West, what it did is it didn't teach any useful skills, and it also brainwashed students. So it failed on both of those accounts. What we're trying to do in the United States, and I think you guys are trying to do in Hungary, is make sure that if you get a university degree, you have one of two things and hopefully both. You either have a useful skill for the workforce, or you have the ability to think critically about society's challenges. And again, ideally you have both of those things. If you don't have those things, you shouldn't be paying for an education.
Your book is also translated to Hungarian. The Netflix movie about you is also watched in Hungary. You are coming from a more poorer family.
Sure.
You are coming from Rust Belt society of the United States, and you attended an Ivy League university. You have a degree from Yale. What was the most important that you received during your education?
Well, that's a good question. You know, I mean, I guess the most important thing that I got during my education, at least in law school, is I got a wife because we met in law school, and that's very important. I'd get in trouble if I didn't say that. but she's actually now pregnant with our 4th child. So obviously family is always the most important. Thank you. And thank you. You know, family's the most important, and I do think that, you know, this maybe is going to sound trite, but not just marriage and relationships romantically, but also friendships. Some of the most important things that I got out of my educational experience, and I had a lot of good mentors who said, people don't invest enough in their friendships. This is a great opportunity to build the kind of friendships. If you're a young person, you're in university, to build the kind of relationships that really can last a lifetime. I think it's a very profound and powerful thing. You shouldn't, you know, yes, you want to get an education, yes, you want to get a good job, but you also, you know, you're spending 4 years with people, maybe longer. And I think you should take that opportunity to really get to know what you're interested in, who you are, and who you want to build a life with, because that's one of the best things that I think you can get out of an education. But I think that just, if you set aside the relationships, I think the most important thing that I acquired, if I'm being honest, at Yale Law School in particular, is that I learned how elite social networks actually work, okay? Like when I looked at this from the perspective of my hometown and I said, why are all the people who have the fancy jobs, why do they have this credential? Or why are all the people who are on the Supreme Court? Or why are all the people who have been in positions of political leadership, why do they all seem to know the same people and come from the same world? And the answer is that, as I think a lot of us know, whether it's in Brussels or Washington, D.C. or New York City, these places become very insular. And they're, you know, there are things about that just are. They're not good, they're not bad. It just, these places are insular. They're built around relationships. They're built around who you know. Many of the most important jobs in American society, I don't like this, by the way, but it's just the truth, are based on who you know. And so it's important to sort of develop those relationships, and it's important for conservatives in particular. I don't like this idea that conservatives shouldn't seek higher education. I don't think that we want to force everybody to go to college, but I think that if you're a conservative in the United States of America and you're interested in running for office, or you're interested in being a judge, you do have to get higher education, okay? So we can accept that college isn't for everybody while also acknowledging that for certain jobs and certain professions, college is necessary. But I think the very negative thing that I learned about it is that these social networks, because they're so insular, they also become very self-reinforcing. I think there are people who have political power in the United States of America, and I'm sure in Brussels too, who have no idea what the majority of Americans actually think about a given issue. They've actually never talked to a normal American, an American who comes outside of these social circles. I mean, I would meet people who went to a fancy prep school, who went to a fancy university, who went to a fancy law school, and had never spoken to a person from my home state of Ohio, even though, you know, it's at certain parts it's a 4 or 5 hour drive from Washington, D.C. And so I think one of the fundamental things that has to change, I don't know about the Hungarian system, but about the American system, is that unless we make education less, unless we make it, frankly, more of a meritocracy, where people can come from all over the country based on merit rather than on who you know, I think the system is fundamentally doomed. And maybe the most important thing about eliminating racial discrimination, particularly against middle-class white kids in the American education context, is not just the moral part of it, okay? The moral part of it I care a lot about. I don't want to discriminate against black kids, white kids, Latino kids. I don't want to discriminate against anybody based on your skin color. I think it's gross and immoral. But a very, very important part of it is that you're going to have actually greater geographic diversity in our universities, because you're going to have people coming from all over the country to study. I think that will make those social networks less insular and less self-destructive.
What would be your... There is a record. What would be your final message to the MCC students? Here are young individuals, 18, 19, 20. What would be the most important that they should be very careful? And if you would be as young as they are now, how would you do your career?
I'd say enjoy your youth while it lasts, because one day you'll wake up and you'll be 41 and you'll have a glass of wine at dinner and wake up with a headache the next morning and be talking to this fine gentleman. So enjoy it while it lasts. But I think the piece of advice I'd give to you, and I give it to American students, American conservatives in particular, is resist the temptation to think that victory is immediate or that we're going to win back our civilization through instant gratification. I mean, this institution was founded in 1996. It's far more influential than it was back then, but I think a lot of people, this is particularly true in the United States of America, if they see something that the administration does they don't like, they say, oh, that's not what we voted for, we're going to check out of politics. No, 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 no. That's the exact wrong response. If we do something you don't like, the response should be to get more involved, to make your voice heard, and to try to push things in the direction that you want them to be pushed. Our civilization was not built overnight. It's not going to be saved overnight. And so what I'd encourage you to do is stay involved, be patient, and don't let disappointment turn to checking out of the system entirely. There's way too much of that, I would say, in the Anglo system and the American system. There's way too much, you know, I didn't like this thing that the vice president said, or I didn't like this thing that the president did, and I'm going to completely check out. We call that blackpilling in the United States of America, and blackpilling is how you give power to the forces that are trying to destroy what our ancestors built. We need to take power back from those people and build the kind of institutions that can actually save our societies. It will not happen overnight. It will not happen in the term of one prime minister or one president, but it will happen so long as we keep our faith in God and we work hard to achieve it. That's what we have to do.
Standing ovation at MCC. Vice President JD Vance, thank you very much, and be a frequent guest at MCC.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.